Have you ever come across a poem that feels less like words on a page and more like a battle cry? Well, today we're diving into one of those. It's Gopal Prasad Rimal's Amako Sapana, or A Mother's Dream. And trust me, this isn't just a poem. It's a whole political vision for a new Nepal, cleverly disguised as a simple chat between a mother and her son. The poem kicks off with this massive question, one that really goes way beyond its own time and place. How does an entire nation even begin to dream of freedom? See, this isn't just about one family. Remel uses this really simple setup to explore the soul of a country that's right on the verge of waking up. Okay, so to really get the full impact of this poem, we've got to travel back in time. We need to understand the world that made a poem like this so necessary. Let's dig into the setting and the revolutionary poet who dared to put this dream on paper. So I want you to picture this. It's the 1940s in Nepal. The country is basically in the grip of the autocratic Rana regime. It's a time filled with fear, but you can feel something starting to change. Events like the 1941 Martyrs incident are sparking a totally new political awareness. And right in the middle of this incredibly tense, charged atmosphere, Gopal Prasad Ramal sits down and writes Amako Sapana. And in doing so, he basically turns poetry into a weapon for democracy. And here is where things get really, really clever. I mean, on the surface, it looks like a simple dialogue, but this is no ordinary chat. What Rimal is doing is staging a symbolic conversation that represents the inner thoughts of an entire nation. The two speakers here are huge symbols. First, you have the mother, and she represents Mother Nepal herself. Tired, but just filled with this desperate hope. And then you have the son. He represents the nation's youth, absolutely brimming with potential, but at the same time, he seems paralyzed, completely unable to act. So the poem opens with the mother describing this incredibly powerful dream she had, a vision of a savior coming to free the land. But here's what's so important. She's not just dreaming of a single hero on a white horse. No, she's dreaming of something so much bigger, a complete and total revolution. This one line is really the heart of her whole vision. The change that's coming, it's not just political, it's like a force of nature. She describes it as more touching than fire and ice. It's something you're meant to feel deep down in your bones, something that's just inevitable and completely unstoppable. So let's break that down because it's such a powerful metaphor. The fire? Well, that's the raw, cleansing heat of rebellion. It's about burning away all the corruption and the old oppressive system. But then it's perfectly balanced by the ice. The ice represents the cool purity, the peace, and the brand new beginning that's going to follow. Okay, now let's turn our attention to the son, the very person who's at the center of his mother's dream. She sees him as this great savior, but the reality is, he's totally stuck. He's trapped in this state of doing absolutely nothing. And man, you can just feel the mother's disappointment here. It's heartbreaking. She remembers seeing the shadow of revolution in his face when he was just a baby, hearing its music in his first words. She had all this hope for him, but now he's just a passive listener, treating this urgent call for truth like it's some bedtime story. And then comes this absolutely devastating line. The song of revolution did not make you its flute. Just think about that for a second. A flute is just a hollow instrument, right? It's waiting for music, for breath to bring it to life. The son, he's that hollow flute, just full of potential. But he's silent. He can hear the song of change all around him, but he refuses to play it. And this is where the poem just explodes. The mother's disappointment finally boils over, and she lays down a direct challenge. The time for dreaming is over. Now she demands that her son become the warrior she knows he can be. This is the transformation she's demanding from him. He has to evolve. He has to go from being a passive story listener, hiding in her lap, to becoming an active history maker. It's not enough to just hear the truth anymore. She tells him he has to see it, to bear its weight, and finally to act on it. And what's really interesting is that it's not just the son who has to change. The mother's role has to transform too. She can't keep coddling a sickly son, who's really a symbol for the whole stagnant nation. Instead, she has to become the one who gives santwana, or consolation, to a warrior who's heading into Sangram, the great battle. She realizes she can't hold him back anymore. She has to be the one to prepare him for the fight. And so the poem leaves us with this powerful, heroic final image. The son, no longer passive, is finally awake. He's ready to fight. He becomes the embodiment of the poem's ultimate message, that this revolution isn't just some fleeting dream his mother had. It's an inevitable dawn, and it's already breaking on the horizon. All right, so after that incredible journey, let's kind of zoom out for a second and look at the core messages that make this poem just so powerful and timeless. So, what are the big takeaways here? Well, at its heart, A Mother's Dream is Mother Nepal's big allegory of hope. It's a fiery call to action for the nation's youth to just shatter their passivity and become revolutionaries. The message couldn't be clearer. The old, corrupt system has to be burned away to make room for something pure and new. And above all, it's a work of incredible optimism, totally convinced that the dawn of freedom isn't just possible, it's inevitable. And the specific words Rimal picks are just packed with meaning. Like Usha doesn't just mean morning, it symbolizes a brand new hope, a new dawn. Sangram isn't just any old fight, it's the epic struggle for freedom. Jidata, that word perfectly captures that feeling of rigid, oppressive stagnation. And Santawana isn't pity, it's the strength and reassurance you give to a warrior. So, the poem leaves us with the sun awakened, ready for action. But Rimal leaves us all with one final, haunting thought. He framed the future of an entire nation as a mother's dream, which kind of forces us to ask ourselves, if a nation is a dream, who are its dreamers today? And maybe more importantly, who are its history makers? Today, we're diving into an ancient story of survival that feels, well, incredibly relevant, even now. It's called The Bereaved Damayanti by Madan Mani Dixit. It's a tale that really makes you ask what it means to endure, and we're about to see exactly why it's captivated people for centuries. But before we really get into the story, I want to leave you with a question that sits right at its very heart. How do you survive the ultimate betrayal? This isn't just some plot point, it's the absolute core of the incredible journey we are about to witness. So the entire story is built on this one central theme: how deep, profound love and just intense struggle can serve as the ultimate test of a person's character. It really explores what happens when everything you know is just stripped away and all you have left is your own spirit. And this is what makes Damayanti's journey so compelling. It's not just one tragedy after another. No, it's a testament to the unbreakable power of the human spirit. We're about to see how her fierce love and this incredible resilience become her compass, guiding her through suffering that is just unimaginable. Okay, so her journey begins in a dark forest where a really cruel twist of fate sets Damayanti on a path of one devastating trial right after another. The story kicks off with an act of just almost unimaginable cruelty: midnight abandonment. In the suffocating silence of a dense forest, King Nala, who's driven by this terrible curse, betrays the person he loves most. He just abandons Princess Damayanti while she's sleeping. Can you just imagine the weight of that moment? When Damayanti wakes up, her whole world is shattered. She is utterly and completely alone. But here's the key. Instead of just giving into despair, her profound love for Nala forces her to start a desperate, agonizing search through the wilderness. Her search, though, it only leads her deeper into danger. She's exhausted, she's starving, she collapses, only to face her next terrifying trial, a monstrous predator. As she sleeps, she gets captured by a lustful Karkatek Naga, a mythical and really powerful serpent man. You can just feel the terror in this scene, right? The Naga carries her away to his den, and he's viewing her as this prize, something to show off his supposed bravery. For Damayanti, this is an absolute living nightmare, a moment of total vulnerability and horror. But this is where Damayanti's character truly ignites. Faced with overwhelming brute force, she doesn't fight back with strength. She fights with her intelligence. This is her first great triumph, a remarkably clever escape that really marks a turning point in her journey. So you've got the Naga, who relies on power and intimidation, but Damayanti's weapon is her wit. She masterfully exploits his massive ego, pretending to accept his protection. Then she charms him into drinking barley beer until he just falls into a drunken stupor. And the moment he does, she grabs a burning torch, sets his den on fire, and just disappears into the night. It's a masterclass in turning an enemy's weakness right against them. So she's free, but she is far from safe. After wandering alone for 3 long days, she faces a totally new kind of trial, one that comes from within herself. the peril of her own beauty. She realizes that as a royal woman traveling all alone, her appearance makes her a constant target. Her solution is both desperate and incredibly calculated. To protect her dignity, she makes this incredible sacrifice. She smears her face and her skin with mud, matting her hair and basically transforming her appearance into that of a madwoman. She actively chooses to be repulsive as a shield for her own safety. And just when it seems like things might finally be turning around, fate intervenes with this breathtaking cruelty. She finds a merchant caravan, and they welcome her in, giving her this brief, precious moment of human connection and warmth. But this hope, it leads directly to the next tragedy. While the caravan is camped by a lake, a whole herd of wild elephants stampedes through the camp at midnight. The night is just filled with screams and destruction. Damayanti has to watch the carnage from the safety of a tree, and the story tells us that her eyes are dry because she had already cried all the tears a human could shed. Finally, after all of this unimaginable suffering, a glimmer of hope appears. She reaches the kingdom of Chedi, and there, the queen, Sunanda, somehow sees past her ragged disguise and senses the royal majesty hidden within. She offers her sanctuary in the palace. But even this moment of salvation, Damayanti doesn't just passively accept help. Nope. As a condition of serving as a nursemaid, she makes 3 sacred vows. And these vows, they aren't random. They are her way of preserving her royal status, her pride, and above all, her faithfulness to Nala. Even in servitude, she is still a queen. What a story! It's just an incredible testament to the human spirit. Let's do a quick recap of the key moments of her perilous journey, just to see how far she's actually come. Her path of resilience is just this powerful arc. It all starts with the shock of abandonment, but it quickly turns to action with her clever escape from the Naga. Then you have the strategic disguise, surviving that awful tragedy, and finally finding sanctuary in the palace of Chedi. Every single step is a test, and she overcomes every single one. Okay, so to really deepen our understanding of her experience, let's look at a few key terms from the story. Grasping these words adds a whole new layer of meaning to the narrative we've just heard. Virahini. This is what Damayanti is at her core, a woman separated from and grieving for her lover. The Sarth is that merchant caravan, which represented that brief, tragic moment of hope. Vikkutstra describes the disfigured appearance she chose for herself, a really powerful act of self-preservation. And Sairandri is the role she takes in the palace, an independent attendant, which cleverly lets her maintain a degree of her own autonomy. And it all leads up to this incredibly poignant line. Her body is in the palace, but her soul remains bonded to the forest paths, waiting. Wow, this tells us everything, doesn't it? While she's found physical safety, her emotional and spiritual journey to find Nala is far from over. She's safe, but she's still a Virahini. And that's what we'll leave you with. Damayanti's story might be ancient, but her struggle is universal. So the question for all of us to think about is this: what gives us the strength to hope when all seems lost?
All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving into a really powerful story from the mountains of Nepal. It's one of those tales that starts out as a story of pure physical exhaustion, but it quickly turns into something much, much deeper. We're talking unexpected kindness, a super mysterious warning, and a revelation that is just, well, it's truly chilling.
This one line? It's pretty much the heart of the whole story. It really gets at that profound moment of relief when something so simple, like a piece of roasted corn, can feel absolutely divine. Just hang on to that feeling, because it's so central to the journey we're about to take.
Okay, so every great journey has to start somewhere, right? And usually it starts with a challenge. So let's begin right there, on a remote mountain path in Nepal, with the sun starting to dip below the horizon.
So picture this, you're on a rugged mountain trail. A group of friends, just totally exhausted from their trek, are facing a pretty grim reality as the sun gets lower and lower. Their destination, Dandaldura, is still way too far to reach before it gets dark.
So they've got to make a choice, and fast. The 3 fastest walkers, which includes our narrator and his friend Pramabadur Pradhan, decide to forge ahead. Their mission is simple but crucial. Tackle the super steep downward slope, the Aralo, and find food and a place to stay for the whole group before everyone else arrives in the pitch black.
Now this is where things get really interesting. The physical journey starts to transform into an emotional one.
What happens next really highlights this beautiful stark contrast between the harshness of the mountain and this one unexpected moment of humanity. So after this absolutely punishing descent, when they're just completely wiped out, the friends spot a single lonely hut, a chopro. It looks poor, honestly, and it's the only sign of life they've seen for miles. They're drawn in by this faint light from inside, just hoping they can find some help. When they look inside, it's a scene of, real poverty. There's a woman cooking over a simple clay stove with her kids nearby, and yet it's in this incredibly humble place, right in the middle of all this hardship, that the travelers find exactly what they were looking for. And the woman, she just takes their money, no fuss, and skillfully roasts 3 cobs of corn for them over her fire. It's such a simple transaction, but for these exhausted travelers, this small meal, which they eat with the very last of their water, feels like an absolute lifeline.
And this, right here, brings us full circle to that crucial line from the beginning. To these starving men, this humble roasted corn tasted like umrit, which is like the nectar of the gods. It was so much more than just food. It was this moment of almost heavenly relief that gave them the strength for what was about to happen next.
But just as the men are feeling their strength come back, getting ready to leave, the story takes this sudden, really mysterious turn. The whole tone is about to shift big time.
As they're getting up to leave, the woman offers them this, it's a very cryptic piece of advice. She says, "Be careful, there might be a guard on the road ahead." And those words just kind of hang in the air, creating this sudden feeling of unease.
And you can just imagine what they're thinking, right? A guard? Out here on this desolate path? It makes absolutely no sense. What could possibly need guarding in a place like this? They're confused for sure, but they thank the woman and just keep on going.
So they continue their journey in the fading light. Before long, their path is crossed by a stream. A totally common sight in the mountains. It seems completely ordinary, but this is the exact spot where that woman's warning is finally going to make sense.
But the moment the narrator gets close to the water, it hits him, this sudden, chilling realization. His heart just starts pounding in his chest, and in that single, terrifying instant, the woman's mysterious warning becomes crystal clear.
See, this wasn't just any old stream. This was a masangat, a cremation ground. In Nepali culture, the last rites for the dead are traditionally performed right next to running water. This quiet, peaceful spot was actually a sacred, somber place for the dead.
And that's the final chilling twist. The guard the woman mentioned wasn't a person at all. She was warning them to respect the sanctity of this place, the spirit of the cremation ground itself. It was a warning to tread carefully and show respect in a place of rest for the dead.
Wow, so with all that, the hardship, the kindness, and that chilling ending, how does it all fit together? Let's quickly break down the essence of this incredible journey. From the pure physical struggle, to that life-affirming moment of kindness, to the cryptic warning, and then that final chilling discovery, this story is such a powerful reminder that a journey is so rarely just about the destination. It's about the profound and totally unexpected moments you find along the way.
When you understand what just these 4 words really mean, the whole story just clicks into place. Orlo is their physical struggle. Chopro is that humble source of kindness. Umrit is their profound relief. And Masanghat, that's the final haunting revelation.
And that's really the big question this story leaves you with, isn't it? That simple act of roasting corn didn't just feed the travelers. It gave them the strength to face the unexpected, and it completely recontextualized their entire journey. It's just a powerful reminder that even on the steepest, hardest paths, the most profound encounters are often the ones we never, ever see coming.
All right, today we're diving deep into one of Nepali literature's most powerful novels, Ek Chihan. And let me tell you, it's a gripping story. It's all about how a single scar, a mark that starts as a source of shame, can become the defining symbol for an entire community's fight for justice. So let's get into it. So this novel was written by Hridaya Chandra Singh Pradhan, who was a real pioneer of what's known as progressive literature. He sets this story in a fictional village, Sundarpur, back in the 1960s. And you have to picture this time. Rural Nepal was just completely gripped by a harsh feudal system. It was a world of powerful landlords and landless farmers, of really deep-rooted poverty and, a rebellion just waiting to happen. Okay, here's how we're going to break down this incredible story. First, we'll explore the world of Ikchihan and the literary movement that really shaped it. Then, we'll meet the family at the center of it all and understand their mark of suffering. From there, we'll see how their grief actually ignites this defiant strike for justice. And finally, we'll uncover the lasting legacy of their struggle. To really get the fire behind this novel, we first have to understand the powerful literary idea that basically lit the match. That idea was a movement called Pragatashil Sahitya, or progressive literature. Now, what's so fascinating here is that this wasn't just about telling a good story. Not at all. Its entire purpose was to use literature as a tool for social change. To shine a harsh, realistic light on the injustices of feudalism and give a voice to the working class, inspiring them to fight for a better world. So let's see how this movement really comes to life in the heart of the story, with one family's absolutely desperate struggle just to survive. This slide just perfectly illustrates the central conflict, doesn't it? It lays out the world of Rambahar's family, their tenant farmers, totally trapped in this cycle of debt and blind faith. Their whole social status is defined by their poverty, which you can see symbolized in their crumbling home. And then on the other side, you have the landlord, whose power creates this canyon of injustice between them. At the center of it all is our protagonist, Ram Bahadur. He's a hardworking, traditional farmer, but he is completely trapped. And right there on his forehead, he carries this crescent-shaped scar, a chihan. At the start of our story, this is not a badge of honor. It's a mark of shame, a physical reminder of his family's suffering and their struggle. The family gets pushed to the absolute brink when Ram's father, Dars Narayan, falls gravely ill. He's on his deathbed, his body just weakened by a lifetime of hard labor. And the family is so poor, they can't even afford medicine for him. Even worse, they don't have the 25 rupees they need for the final funeral rites, a basic dignity that's just completely denied to them by their poverty. And this is where we meet another key character, Dr. Gadaduda Prasad. At first, he kind of represents the indifference of the wider society. He's dismissive of the family, mainly because they're poor. But as the story unfolds, his heart awakens. He completely transforms into a selfless doctor and a social reformer, which goes to show that humanity can, and really must, transcend class lines. Now we get to the pivotal moment of the story, the one that lights the fuse for a social explosion, and it's born from a really deep personal tragedy. Inevitably, Dars Narayan dies, and for Ram, this is the ultimate turning point. His sorrow is just immense, but it quickly hardens into something else entirely, a cold, burning resolve. He realizes that it wasn't just an illness that killed his father, it was the system, and he vows to fight it. This newfound defiance is captured in one incredibly powerful moment. The landlord's arrogant son, Arjun, confronts Ram, and he's just mocking his poverty, mocking his scar. He sneers, "That mark proves you're nothing." But Ram, standing tall, replies with words that signal a profound change has happened inside him. He says, "It proves I'm alive." So here's the crucial point. The meaning of the Chihan completely transforms. What was once a private symbol of suffering and shame becomes a public banner of resistance. It's not just Ram's scar anymore. It's the mark of every oppressed farmer in the village. It's a symbol of their shared struggle and their collective will to survive. So how does one man's courage ignite a whole collective movement? Well, let's follow the path to the uprising. The path to this uprising is like a rapid chain reaction. A father's tragic death fuels a son's personal vow. That vow inspires a whole village to petition for fair wages. But when their plea is literally torn apart, they organize a strike. The landlord's violent response only strengthens their resolve, and that leads to a hard-won partial victory. Inspired by Ram's courage and guided by a local organizer named Comrade Harry, the villagers all gather under this large banyan tree. This spot basically becomes their headquarters for a revolution. Together, they organize a strike, demanding fair wages and an end to the tyrannical rule of the landlord, Bikram Singh. So how does the landlord respond? With pure fury. When he's presented with the petition, Bikram Singh doesn't even think about negotiating. He tears it to pieces. He calls the farmers insects under my boot, and then unleashes his armed men on the peaceful strikers, beating them and burning their banners. In the middle of all this chaos, the landlord's son, Arjun, grabs Ram and holds a knife right up to his scar, threatening to cut it off his face. And this is when Ram delivers the story's most iconic line. He's bleeding, but totally unbroken, and he says, Cut it, and 100 more will rise. In that one moment, the Chihan becomes invincible. It's not just flesh anymore, it's an idea. So where does all this struggle lead? Let's take a look at the final outcome and the really powerful message this story leaves us with. The strike doesn't end in a total revolution. The landlord is forced to make some concessions, sure, but he isn't overthrown. And this is actually one of the novel's most realistic and powerful points. It mirrors the story of so many social justice movements. Change is hard-won, it's often incremental, but it proves that through collective solidarity, the chains of oppression can be broken. The title itself, Ik Chinhan, which can mean one mark or one grave, is just layered with meaning. It argues that in death, all people are equal, erasing the class and caste boundaries of life. It also symbolizes the unity of the working class and challenges those expensive rituals that just push poor families deeper into debt. The ultimate message is really clear: there is dignity in labor. And this really gets to the core of the story's humanism. When tragedy strikes, the community comes together. Neighbors and friends offer support, proving that a shared sense of humanity is a force that's way more powerful than wealth or social status. Empathy, it turns out, is the root of the revolution. Ultimately, Ek Shihan is a timeless story about transformation. It leaves us with a really powerful question to think about. How can the marks of our own struggles, the scars that we all carry in one way or another, be transformed from sources of shame into our greatest symbols of strength and hope? You know, some people's stories just completely change how you see the world. Today, we're talking about one of those people, a man whose body was confined to a chair, but his mind traveled to the very edges of the cosmos and back to the beginning of time. This is the story of Stephen Hawking, and it's an incredible story about the power of willpower. I mean, that really says it all, doesn't it? It's more than just a nice quote. It was his entire philosophy for life. It's this powerful invitation for all of us to stay curious, to wonder, and to reach for something bigger, no matter what obstacles are in our way. So, let's dive into the life that inspired those words. So you might think a guy like this was a genius from day one, right? Well, not exactly. His journey started in a pretty unexpected way. In a world at war, with a young boy who was way more interested in tinkering than in getting top grades. Okay, so he was born in Oxford for safety, right in the middle of World War II. And get this, in school, he was actually considered a pretty weak student. His grades were just average. But at home, that's where the real story was unfolding. At just 13 years old, he built a working computer from spare parts. We're talking old clock pieces and radio bits. It was a huge, flashing sign of the brilliant mind that was just starting to wake up. And it's funny, right? His friends got it. They saw what was going on long before the teachers did. They actually nicknamed him Einstein. Not because of his report card, but because he had this amazing knack for building these complex things out of nothing. He was already thinking on a whole different level. But just as everything was starting to click, just as his academic career was about to really take off at Cambridge, his entire world was turned upside down by something he never saw coming. He's only 21 years old, he's at Cambridge, his mind is buzzing with ideas about the universe. And then, bam, he gets this devastating diagnosis, ALS. It's this absolutely brutal motor neuron disease that basically traps a perfectly brilliant mind inside a body that's slowly shutting down. And, you know, it didn't happen all at once. It started small, slurring a word here and there, losing his balance, things you might just brush off. But they were the first signs that something was terribly wrong. And the diagnosis confirmed his absolute worst fears. So he gets this diagnosis, and then comes the prognosis from the doctors, and it was just crushing. They gave him 2 years to live. 2. Can you even imagine hearing that at 21 years old, with a universe of ideas still waiting to be explored? And, I mean, who wouldn't? He completely spiraled. He fell into this deep, dark depression. What was the point of his research anymore? What was the point of anything? He just shut himself off from the world, listening to music, as the universe he was so desperate to understand just felt like it was slipping away. But, and this is the amazing part of his story, somewhere in that darkness, something changed. He made a choice. He decided not to surrender. This is where that incredible willpower of his just ignites and starts to fuel his actions. And this is really the core of his story, isn't it? Look at this contrast. His physical reality was shrinking day by day until he was confined to a wheelchair. But his mind? His mind was doing the exact opposite. It was exploding outwards, soaring through space and time, exploring black holes. It was totally, completely free.
And he wasn't on this journey alone, which is so important. He married Jane Wilde. I mean, think about her strength for a moment. She knew the prognosis, she knew what they were up against, and she chose to build a life with him anyway. She was his rock, his pillar of strength.
And the result of all that willpower? It's just mind-blowing. As his body was failing him, his career was soaring to a level most people can only dream of. He became the Lucasian Professor of Mathematics at Cambridge. That's the same job Isaac Newton had. It's the ultimate triumph of mind over matter. But the disease, it just never let up. It was relentless, always there, always taking more. And just as he was sharing these incredible ideas with the world, it came for the one thing he needed most to do that, his voice. So, in 1985, after a bad illness, he had to have a tracheotomy. And just like that, his voice was gone. For good. That could have been it, right? The end of the story. But it wasn't. Technology stepped in. This incredible computer system, which he controlled with just a tiny muscle in his cheek, gave him a new voice. And that synthesized voice became, without a doubt, one of the most famous and recognizable voices in all of science. And man, did he use that voice to teach us. He completely turned physics on its head. He showed us that black holes aren't really black after all. They actually leak energy, something we now call Hawking radiation. He helped us understand that our entire universe might have started from a single, impossibly tiny point called a singularity. And then he made all this mind-bending stuff accessible to regular people with his bestseller, A Brief History of Time. But you know, he wasn't just looking billions of years into the past. He was also looking right here, at us, and into our future. And frankly, he was worried about what he saw. He basically saw humanity standing at a fork in the road, and he warned us about three huge, self-made threats. First, the absolute devastation of nuclear war. Second, the crisis of global warming. And third, something he was really concerned about, artificial intelligence, especially if we're not careful with it. He was genuinely afraid it could get out of our control. He passed away in 2018 at 76 years old. But just stop and think about that. The doctors gave him 2 years to live when he was 21. He lived for 55 more. 55 years. And he didn't just survive, he revolutionized our understanding of everything. So how did he do it? What was the secret? Well, one way to look at it is this idea of a triple power. It wasn't just that he was brilliant. That's the knowledge part. It was that he took that knowledge and actually did something with it. That's the action. And driving it all, fueling everything, was that absolutely unbreakable willpower. You know, in the end, Stephen Hawking's life is this incredible proof that our physical bodies don't have to be our cage. His story is just the ultimate example of what the human spirit is capable of. And it kind of leaves you with a big question, doesn't it? A question for all of us. When we face our own struggles, big or small, what could we accomplish if we just chose willpower over despair? All right, welcome. Today, we're diving into an absolute masterpiece of Nepali literature by the one and only national poet Madhav Prasad Ghamire. We're going to unpack his iconic poem, Hamilai Bulaksan Himchuli. Now, that translates to The Snow Peaks Call to Us. And believe me, it's a poem that asks a really profound question about what it actually means to stand tall. So right off the bat, the poem throws this very question at us. And you know what? It answers it in the most beautiful way. But here's the thing, this isn't just about a physical climb. No way. It's really a journey, a deep dive into the very soul of a nation, a place where nature, bravery, and dignity are all intertwined. So first up, the mountains call. This is our invitation to ascend. You see, our journey doesn't kick off with some big, tough struggle. Not at all. Instead, the poem opens with this joyful, almost magnetic pull. The majestic snow peaks, the Himchuli, they're basically calling out, beckoning travelers to come and see what's up there. And the feeling the poet captures here, it's just remarkable. Think about it. They're going up these steep climbs, the Ukali. That should be totally exhausting. But no, the poem says it feels effortless. Like their footsteps are light, they're not being weighed down by the climb, they're literally being fueled by the sheer excitement of it all. It's as if their spirits are just carrying them up the mountain. Okay, next up, a journey through nature. We're talking about a living landscape. So as we go further up the trail, the poet just drops us right into this world that is buzzing with life. Seriously, this climb becomes a full-on sensory experience. He paints such a vivid picture of Himalayan life, a world where people and nature are just perfectly in tune. And just look at this. It's all about the simple joys, isn't it? You can almost feel it. That idea of drinking pure, ice-cold water straight from a mountain stream. Or maybe stopping at a Jirali, that's kind of like a resting spot on a mountain pass, and just whistling an old folk tune, a sawai. It's all about finding this deep, real joy in the simplest moments. And the landscape, it's literally filled with life and music. You have these shepherdesses, the Gathalini, and their songs just echo through the valleys while they're calling out to their animals. That little detail shows such a deep connection, right? They're not just living on the land, it's like they're a part of its song. Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting. Someone asks the travelers, "Hey, where are you guys going?" And their answer is so fascinating. They say they're looking for the Himmelgebeuchti, the Himalayan herb. But get this, it's not a real plant. Nope, it's this powerful metaphor for something much, much deeper. They're really on a quest for wisdom, for peace, for the very soul of their nation. And the poet just keeps layering on these incredible details. He's really building this world for us. You can practically smell the fragrant buki flowers. You can picture the shy musk deer, the kasturi, peeking out from the trails. And then there's the danfei, Nepal's national bird, with its incredible 9-colored feathers. But these aren't just pretty pictures, you see. They're symbols. They represent the rich, vibrant heritage of the entire nation, both its culture and its nature. All right, new section, the perilous heights. This is where things get serious, a true test of courage. Because as they climb higher, that beautiful, romantic vision of the journey, well, it starts to fade. And what's left is a really stark, unforgiving reality. Suddenly, the mountain isn't just inviting anymore. Now it's a test. And this is the real trial. The poem introduces this term, changachor. We're talking seriously treacherous, steep cliffs, paths just disappear under the snow. The air gets thin. The danger is real, and it's right there in your face. This is that moment. The moment when the only thing you have left is your own raw courage. And that brings us to the very heart of this poem, the unbreakable Nepali spirit, never bowing down. Because it's right here, in this moment of absolute peak danger, when turning back seems like the only smart thing to do, that's when the poem's core message just explodes onto the page. This is it. This is the whole point. Wow. Just let that sink in. It is better to die on the peaks than to bow down in the lowlands. This one line, it's everything. It's this powerful, powerful declaration. It's saying that living with dignity, with a spirit that refuses to be broken, is worth more than life itself. The idea is that a life you spend bowing down to others, well, that's not really a life at all. It's better to face the end standing tall on the summit. And this is where the poet ties it all together. It's brilliant. He says that the physical mountains, the Himalayas themselves, always standing tall, never bending for anything or anyone, they are a direct mirror of the national character. That right there is the essence of the Gortali spirit. To be unbowed, to be resilient, to be proud, just like the mountains that are the backbone of their home. Okay, so what happens when they make it? What's the ultimate goal here? Reaching the summit. So after all that, what's the big reward for all this courage? I'll tell you this much. It's way more than just, hey, I climbed a mountain. The ultimate goal, you see, is to reach the shikhar, the summit. But it's not just about the pretty view. The real purpose is to see the unseen world. What does that mean? It means gaining a higher perspective, a whole new level of understanding and wisdom that you just can't get if you stay down below. That's the real prize for making it through the tough part. So let's just do a quick recap of this whole poetic ascent, right? It all starts with an invitation from the mountains. That leads to a joyful ascent through this incredible living world. Then the mood completely shifts with the high altitude risks. That forces a vow of bravery, and the whole thing climaxes with reaching the summit and that higher state of mind. When you lay it out like that, it's a classic hero's journey, all packed into one amazing poem. So what are the big takeaways here? The poem is really weaving three huge ideas together. First, national identity. The Himalayas are literally the backbone of the Nepalese soul. Second, Gorkhali bravery, that never give up attitude where the struggle itself is something to be proud of. And finally, nature bonding, this really romantic idea that nature is actually communicating with us. Put them all together, and you get this incredibly powerful message about an unbreakable spirit. You know, in the end, Guimaret's poem is so much more than just a story about a climb. It shows us that a landscape, well, it's never just geography, is it? It's a mirror. It reflects the history, the values, the entire spirit of a people. And that leaves us with a pretty cool question to think about for ourselves. What do our own landscapes, our mountains, our cities, our coastlines, what do they say about us? Today, we're diving into Matra Toi, which translates to motherhood. It's a really powerful story by Bhagarathi Shrestha that asks us to think about that sacred bond between a mother and her children, and the incredibly tough choices that can put it to the test. And this story, it makes you ask a pretty deep question. When a mother is backed into a corner, what's her greatest strength? Is it that unconditional love she has for her kids, or is it her own self-respect? Keep that conflict in your mind as we get into the story.
All right, to really get this conflict, we need to meet our main character, a woman named Mamata, and step into her world for a minute. So Mamata's life has just been completely turned upside down. She lost her husband in a plane crash, and now she's raising her 2 children all on her own. The story describes her world as a dark, empty tunnel, just this place of deep loneliness and feeling really insecure. But then, into this darkness comes Subodh. He was her late husband's friend, and he shows up offering sympathy, what feels like a protective branch for her to lean on. And for Mamata, this feels like a lifeline. But here's the key part. She's really hoping for a pure emotional connection, not just a physical one.
But as you might have guessed, this glimmer of hope, well, it starts to fade pretty quickly. As her relationship with Subodh moves forward, some serious red flags start poking up.
And the first big warning sign doesn't come from an adult. It comes from her 10-year-old son. You know how kids just have this incredible intuition? He senses that Subodh's affection isn't real. He sees a truth that his mom, well, she's not quite ready to face yet.
This isn't just a vague feeling either. It gets confirmed by Subodh's actual behavior. Take a look at this incident with the semolina pudding. I mean, it sounds like a small thing, right? But when he demands the portion that was made for the children, it shows this shocking level of selfishness and a total lack of concern for them.
And the contrast between him and her late husband just couldn't be more obvious. On one hand, you have the memory of her husband, who'd never eat until his kids were fed. And on the other, you have Subodh, who sees the children as a disturbance and offers a life of pretension, not real security.
And it just gets worse. Subodh's selfishness escalates. He doesn't just want the kids out of his hair for an afternoon. He starts pressuring Mamata to send them away for good, to boarding school. And why? Because he literally sees them as obstacles to his own pleasure and his relationship with her. So, all this tension, this fake life, it's all building and building towards one single, awful event that forces Mamata to finally see the truth she's been avoiding. This is the breaking point.
Subodh's reaction to this crisis is just chilling. Mamata is in a total panic, searching everywhere for her daughter, Chandrama. And what's he doing? He's calmly reading a book. When she desperately needs his support, his response is a cold, "The police will notify us." And then, to top it all off, he actually fakes a stomach ache to get out of going to the hospital with her. So yeah, this accident is way more than just a tragedy. It's the absolute turning point. This is the moment of horrifying clarity for Mamata. His complete and utter indifference to her child's well-being exposes his true, heartless nature beyond any shadow of a doubt. All those little red flags suddenly lead to this one undeniable conclusion.
And with that clarity, something inside Mamata just shifts. Permanently. She's no longer a victim of her circumstances. She's about to take back control. I love the way the story describes this. A volcano of anger that's been building up inside her finally erupts. She realizes the man she hoped would be a gentle, protective cow for her family was actually a predatory tiger who just wanted to consume her for himself. And in this moment of awakening, her whole perspective changes. Faced with Subodh's cruelty, her priorities just snap into sharp focus. Her children aren't obstacles. No, they're her sun and her moon. They're the center of her entire universe. This leads to her final, powerful stand. She confronts Subodh, telling him their trust is dead, like a yellow leaf in autumn.
She chooses her children's love over his toxic presence, and she demands her freedom. This is her reclaiming everything. So, after that intense confrontation, where does that leave Mamata and her children? Well, the ending isn't about heartbreak at all. It's about victory. Subodh storms out, absolutely furious. But for Mamata, him leaving isn't a loss. It's a huge relief. The story says it's like a heavy stone finally falls from her neck, and this cool water of truth washes over her. She's finally free from all the pretending. And the story ends on this really beautiful, quiet, peaceful note. She's holding her children, and she whispers to her sleeping son, and probably to herself too, he will never come again. And in that moment, in that act of pure motherhood, she finds her truest happiness. So let's just recap that journey real quick. Mamana, a vulnerable widow, looks for companionship but instead finds a selfish predator. His true character comes out piece by piece, hitting a low point with his shocking indifference during the accident. This forces her to make a choice, and she chooses her kids, reclaiming not just her role as a mom, but her own freedom and her self-respect. And that brings us right back to that first question, which is what I want to leave you with. Was Mamata's decision to give up a relationship for her children a sacrifice? Or was it actually a victory? A triumph of self-respect and the incredible, unbeatable power of motherhood? It's something powerful to think about.
Have you ever wished you could just reach into your computer and punch a virus? Well, what if you could? Today, we're diving into a really cool story by Bakhad Bahadur Thapa. He takes the boring old task of virus removal and turns it into this epic battle fought by a digital warrior named Gorkhe. It's awesome.
So let's set the scene. It starts with a problem we've all been through, right? That painfully slow computer. Our guy, Satpal, is at his wit's end. His PC is lagging, files are just acting weird. You know the drill. It's obvious something's deeply wrong. His computer has basically caught a digital plague, and it's time to call in the cavalry.
And that cavalry, it literally arrives on a motorcycle. Meet Pishal. He's this super skilled, creative computer tech. But here's the thing. He's not just your average repair guy. Nope. He's a total innovator, and he's cooked up his own special fix for these nasty digital infections. His buddy Satpal has no idea what he's about to witness.
So, Pashal doesn't just pull out some off-the-shelf software. No way. He unleashes his own creation, a totally unique antivirus he calls Gorkhe. And that name is no accident. It's all about bravery, strength, resilience, everything you need for a tough fight. And trust me, a tough fight is definitely on the menu.
Okay, so as Pashal hits scan, something impossible happens. This is not your average progress bar. A terrifying warrior, Gorkhe himself, literally materializes right there on the screen. I'm talking horns, armor made of tree bark, a super fierce expression. It's a wild sight. Satpal is so blown away, he actually yells for his wife, Sonam, to come see this digital shaman getting ready for war. And then a roar blasts through the computer speakers. The great viral war has begun. Gorkhe's mission? It's simple. Hunt down and obliterate every single malicious piece of code hiding in that machine.
But Gorkhe isn't just up against one bad guy. Oh no, he's facing a whole crew of them, 5 distinct nasty viruses. And each one is a specialist in causing digital chaos, you know? From the Brontok virus that just multiplies folders like crazy, to the annoying boot sector virus that keeps restarting the PC. Let's see how he handles this rogues gallery.
So this first fight is where things get really interesting, because it's so physical. Gorkhe goes head-to-head with this multi-headed Brontok virus. You know, the type, that nasty program that just creates endless copies of folders to clog up your system? But Gorkhe doesn't just hit delete. He reaches in, drags it out, and literally strangles it. Wild, right?
But hold on, our hero isn't invincible. The next bad guy, this hairy beast called the memory virus, actually manages to land a nasty bite on Gorkhe's leg. It even draws what the story calls digital blood. So yeah, he's hurt, but Gorkhe fights back, smashing the virus's head with his elbows. This is where you realize, wow, the stakes are actually real here, even inside a computer.
And then things go from bad to worse. While Gorkhe is still fighting, a sneaky thief virus attacks his other leg, and he goes down. And while he's on the ground, the boot sector virus does something truly weird. It just sits on his stomach and starts tickling him until he can't fight back. I'm not making this up. So now he's injured, he's overwhelmed, and he's being tickled into submission. This is it. The turning point.
The crisis. The constant attacks from all these new, smarter viruses have just worn him down. Gorky starts to turn pale, his body looking like dry wood, as his digital life just fades away. He is right on the edge of being completely defeated.
And in that moment of pure desperation, he cries out to Peshal, his creator. He has one single, urgent command. But he's not asking for a new weapon or a better shield. He's asking for something way, way more powerful in the tech world.
Peshal gets it instantly. Satpal scrambles to plug in a CDMA internet device, and as soon as it connects, the update starts to stream in. The story beautifully describes it as new blood and fresh energy just pouring into Gorky's body. He's being revived, getting ready for the final showdown. And you can just see the transformation, right? It's night and day. Before the update, Gorky was pale, weak, basically toast. After the update, he is vibrant, his energy is back, and he is stronger than he ever was. That's the power of new virus definitions, new code, new strength.
So now, with all this new power, this isn't a fight anymore. It's a total beatdown. The fully powered Gorky just flexes, and you can see the last few viruses trying to run away in terror. The tables have completely turned. The hunter is now unstoppable.
And the end comes fast. Gorky just slaps and crushes the last of his enemies, cleans up every single file, and gets the whole system back to perfect health. And then he turns, gives a final thumbs up, and just vanishes. Job done. The computer is fast, clean, and back to normal.
So, what's the big takeaway here? Well, this story is way more than just a cool fantasy. It's really an allegory, a perfect metaphor for the never-ending war between antivirus software and viruses. It makes these super complex ideas easy to understand, it celebrates homegrown innovation, and, this is the most important part, it hammers home one crucial message. Always, always keep your software updated.
Okay, let's go over a couple of key words from the story that are pretty cool. First, we've got Mahavikaral. That's the word they use to describe Gorky when he first pops up on screen looking all intimidating. It basically means terrifying or just huge, and it perfectly captures that whoa moment when his avatar appears.
Next up is a word I'm sure we've all screamed at our devices. Lagging. I mean, it's the perfect description for what Satpal is going through at the beginning, right? That agonizingly slow performance, that frustrating pause between when you click something and when it finally decides to happen.
And last but not least, the boot sector. So think of this as the ignition switch for your computer. It's the critical part that gets the whole operating system up and running. When a virus gets in there, like our tickle monster from the story, it's a huge problem because it can trap your computer in that endless, maddening cycle of restarting over and over again.
Which kind of brings us to a final thought, doesn't it? Gorky got totally overwhelmed by new, evolved threats until he got that crucial update. It really makes you think. When we're facing our own viruses, the problems in life that weaken us and knock us down, what does our update look like? Maybe it's learning something new, or getting a fresh perspective, or maybe it's just being brave enough to ask for help.
So what really makes someone Nepali? It's a question that sounds pretty simple on the surface, doesn't it? But as we're about to find out, the answer is this incredible, complex tapestry, woven from mountains, diverse cultures, and a really powerful shared spirit.
And to really get into this, you have to ask, where do you even start? Is the heart of Nepali identity in those towering peaks of the Himalayas, the image the whole world knows? Or is it something deeper, something you find in the mix of cultures or in a shared history? What is the common ground, the glue, that really unites everyone?
So here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll dig into that big question. Then we're going to listen in on a conversation about identity between four friends. We'll see how they manage to weave one unified idea of a nation from their different perspectives. And finally, we'll wrap things up with the key takeaways and some really important vocabulary.
All right, so how do we explore something this big? Well, we're going to listen in on a chat between four friends, and you can think of each one as holding a different piece of this big national puzzle. Let's meet the four friends at the center of this whole discussion. First up, we've got Dorje, who represents the mountain region. For him, being Nepali is all about bravery and the Himalayas. Then there's Mani from the hilly region, and he argues that it's actually about the immense diversity of cultures. Praveen from the Terai Plains steps in to make it clear that you can't talk about identity without including the languages and culture of his region. And finally, we have Sundar, who's going to try and bring all these ideas together.
Dorje kicks things off with a powerful image, one that the whole world recognizes. For him, identity is almost an external thing. It's what the world sees. the country of Mount Everest, a legacy of courageous ancestors. It's an identity built on just awe-inspiring geography and a deep sense of historical pride.
But Mani immediately pushes back on that. He argues that the true heart of the nation isn't just the famous peaks, but the hilly region. He points to the incredible diversity of castes, the sheer number of languages, and the rich cultural traditions. For Mani, identity is internal, something defined by unique art, craftsmanship, and the daily lives of its people, not just its mountains. This brings us to Praveen, and he introduces a really crucial perspective that's often overlooked, the Terai. He argues that a true Nepali identity has to include the distinct languages of the plains, like Maithili and Bhojpuri, and it has to acknowledge the unique culture that exists there. It's a powerful reminder that the picture just isn't complete without including every single region.
Okay, so we have three strong but seemingly separate points of view. One is based on geography and bravery, another on cultural diversity in the hills, and a third on the distinct identity of the plains. So how do you connect them? This is where our fourth friend Sundar steps in to offer a way to bring it all together.
Sundar basically lays out a four-step framework for unity. First, he says, you have to embrace the complete geography, the Himalayas, the hills, and the Terai. Second, you honor the shared history of bravery that belongs to everyone. Third, you have unifying symbols like the flag and traditional dress that everyone can rally around. But it's the fourth step that really ties it all together. It's about spirit, the feeling of being one people, which you can only get through coexistence and mutual respect.
And here it is, the crucial point that brings it all home. True Nepali identity isn't just a collection of different places and cultures. It's an active, living thing. It's the spirit of coexistence. It's that feeling of being one people that's nurtured through mutual respect and the will to live together in harmony, celebrating every single part of the whole.
Okay, that was a fantastic breakdown. Let's do a quick recap of the key takeaways so we can really understand this idea of Nepali identity as a beautiful and intricate mosaic.
So in short, what is Nepali identity? Well, it's a mosaic of geography, combining the mountains, hills, and plains. It's a tapestry of cultures, with all their diverse languages and traditions. It's a legacy of history, built on a shared pride in their ancestors. And above all, it's a spirit of unity, defined by that powerful idea of coexistence, mutual respect, and the vision of a common future.
Now, to help us deepen our understanding even more, let's look at 3 essential words from the Nepali language that perfectly capture the core ideas we've just been talking about. First up is sahastitwa, which translates to coexistence. This is the foundation, that spirit we just talked about. And it's not just about tolerating differences, it's the active practice of living together peacefully, with genuine respect for one another. You could say it's the how-to guide for national unity.
Next, we have vividhata, or diversity. In this context, diversity isn't seen as a hurdle to unity. Not at all. Instead, it's celebrated as a core component. It's the very fabric from which the national identity is woven.
And all of this leads to ekata, or unity. This is the ultimate goal. It's the powerful idea that because of the nation's vividata and through the spirit of sahastitwa, the people of Nepal are truly one.
So we'll leave you with this final thought. The conversation between those 4 friends shows us that national identity isn't a static monument, but a living, breathing dialogue. And this leads to a vital question for any nation, really. If identity is a conversation, how do we make sure that every single voice has a chance to be heard?
It's pretty amazing when you think about it. A tiny little seed holds the potential to grow into this massive tree. Well, today we're exploring an idea that works in pretty much the same way. It's called Sahakari, and it is all about the incredible power that gets unleashed when people decide to work together. Okay, so let's get right into it. What exactly is Sahakari, or a cooperative? At its heart, it's not a complicated idea at all. It's really just a group of people realizing, hey, we can achieve way more by joining forces than we ever could on our own. They come together to solve a problem they all share, or to meet a need they all have. Now, I know that definition sounds super formal, right? Kind of like something from a textbook. But the key words here really tell the whole story. First, it's voluntary, and that's huge. No one is ever forced to join. Second, it's jointly owned, which just means the people who actually use the business are the ones who own it. And third, and this is the real game changer, it's democratically controlled. This part is what makes a cooperative so different from a typical business. So let's dig into how that actually works. So, if a cooperative is like a seed, what makes it grow? Well, it all comes down to a few core principles that build the whole system from the ground up. The first, and honestly the most fundamental principle, is democracy. This isn't some top-down company where a CEO is calling all the shots. Nope. In a cooperative, the power rests with the members themselves. And what's so cool here is how you can really see that fairness in action. It doesn't matter if you're a small farmer or a bigger producer. Your voice carries the exact same weight. One member, one vote. It's as simple as that. This ensures that every decision is made to benefit the entire group, not just the folks at the deepest pockets. I mean, that's a radical shift from the usual business model where money equals power. All right, the second key principle is all about how members aren't just passive owners on the sidelines. They are the actual economic engine of the cooperative. They contribute to and they directly benefit from the capital of their own business. And this chart illustrates it perfectly. Since the members own the business, they're the ones who decide what to do with any profits. They can put money back into the business to make it stronger, they can fund local community projects, or they can distribute the profits right back to themselves as dividends. The money actually circulates within the community, making everybody stronger. So, we've seen how the model works. Now let's talk about the results, the fruits of all this collaboration. What are the real, tangible benefits? It's such a logical and powerful process. See, it all starts when individuals pool what they have, their money, their skills, their knowledge. Together, that gives them this collective power to achieve autonomy, which frees them from having to depend on outside forces. And the final, most important outcome of all that? True self-reliance. Just look at these numbers. An individual might only have, say, $500 to invest. On your own, that doesn't give you much leverage, right? But when 100 members all pool that same amount, they suddenly have $50,000 to work with. Now they can buy in bulk, invest in better equipment, and negotiate way better deals. This is the magic of shared economic strength. This quote just perfectly captures the spirit of it all. It's not just about running a business. It's about empowerment. It's about a community taking control and literally shaping its own future. So, let's pull all these threads together. We've seen how one single seed of an idea can take root, grow strong like a tree, and eventually form a whole forest of community resilience. So if you remember anything, remember this. Cooperatives are democratic. The members, not some outside investors, are the ones who own, control, and get the benefits. The whole model is built on people actively participating and sharing in the success. It fosters real self-reliance and makes the whole community better off. Okay, to wrap things up, let's look at a few key terms. You can think of them as the gardener's tools, the essential language you need to really understand the world of cooperatives. First up is swabalambi. This means being self-reliant. And really, it's the ultimate goal of a cooperative, to empower its members so they aren't at the mercy of others anymore. They can stand on their own 2 feet. Next, we have swayata, which is autonomy. This connects right back to that principle of democratic control we talked about. It's the freedom the group has to make its own decisions and chart its own course without anyone from the outside telling them what to do. And finally, there's atmanirbhar. Now, this is similar to self-reliant, but it's more about looking inward. It's about being self-sufficient by relying on your own capabilities and resources, the strength that comes from within the group itself. And on the money side of things, you've got La Pancha, which is just the dividend, or share of profits, paid out to the members. And then there's the bonus. That's usually an extra payment given to members based on how much they actually use the cooperative services. Both are just different ways of sharing the success. So, we'll leave you with this thought. We've seen how a single cooperative can empower people and create prosperity right where they live. So the real question is, what happens if this idea spreads? What could an entire forest of cooperation achieve? Not just for one community, but for a whole society.